is the member for Strathfield seeking the call? I call the member for Strathfield.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Sorry, my mind's spinning. I'm trying to make sense of what I just heard. I spent some time thinking about how those opposite were trying to manage the economy in the 12 years that they were in power. And what I make of it is kind of this. There was a pathological singular obsession with transport mega projects. Pathological singular obsession with transport mega projects. But they had to be funded somehow, so they had to come out of the way of how to fund this. And the way they funded it, there were three aspects of how they funded it. One was privatisation, selling off our public assets, the toll roads, our energy assets, energy companies, acute public hospitals. They sold off public hospitals, and in particular Northern Beaches Hospital. Let's just pick at that a little bit. They put a public hospital in the hands of a publicly listed company, Healthscope at the time, that was then taken private by a foreign private equity firm, which really, if you think about that, it meant that there was a public emergency department that was operated by a foreign leveraged buyout fund. What could go wrong, Madam Speaker? What could go wrong with that? Aspect number two to the economic formula of the other side was, of course, loading up the state's balance sheet with debt. This was a kind of a failure of the first pillar, which was, asset recycling. The theory is that if you sell off an asset, you can bank the proceeds of that and use that to fund future infrastructure. But it didn't quite work. It didn't quite add up. And so, at the same time as selling off our crown jewels, it racked up $190 billion of gross government debt expected in 2029. We've managed to reduce that debt by about $10 billion through the Treasurer and the Finance Minister's work, such that we have retained all three credit ratings from the credit agency, saving about $400 million a year in interest payments. The third aspect to their economic thing was, of course, the wages cap. And look, it's kind of, if you care not for public servants, it's kind of economic genius, because if you look at the budget papers, you recognise salaries are about 50% of state expenses. About 50% of the state's expense bill is salaries. So how do you stop wage inflation? How do you stop the expense part of the budget from going out of control? You cap the wages. End of story. There's no negotiation. There's no need for a wage negotiation, because you know what? It's unlawful. You can't do it. You can't increase the wages unless you change the legislation. Evil genius. Madam Speaker, evil genius in this. And not only did this decimate the public service, nobody wanted to be a teacher anymore, because teachers' wages were so far behind private sector wages. Nobody wanted to be a police officer anymore. Nobody wanted to be a nurse anymore. Decimated our public services, Madam Speaker. But that wasn't the only damage that it did. It has real impacts on the real economy. It suppressed real wages in the real economy and pulls money. It pulls money out of the real economy. But the bottom line is, Madam Speaker, I hear the member for Epping, her refrain. Wages were not suppressed under the wages cap, Madam Speaker. This could only mean one thing. This could only mean one thing, Madam Speaker, that it is coming back. That should they ever one day in the nether return to government, we can rest assured the wages cap is coming back to New South Wales.